And many of these brands have collaborated with the mainstream. And we've seen the buzz that it can create and the difference that it can make in the hearts and minds of consumers all over. So super excited for the panelists today. Come up on stage. I'm going to give them a nice introduction. Give them all a round of applause. We've got Marvin Washington to my left here.
Nice to meet you.
Entrepreneur, former NFL player, Super Bowl champion. Marvin, you are the mainstream. You're helping raise awareness of the plant.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah, that's cool.
tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the space and how you're bridging that gap.
I'm still just, cannabis advocate particularly for athletes, and plant-based, making sure that the leagues know about plant-based medicine, whether it's CBD, THC, or even mushrooms, because people are starting to get into that. And get away from the opiates and benzodiazepines that they're poisoning their players with. Professional athletes are 3 to 4 times to be addicted to opiates than the general society, and that's because we're introduced to them at an early age and we stay on them for a long time, and some guys can't turn that spigot off. So I've had meetings with the NFL, I've had meetings with the NHL, I have meetings with the NBA, and where we were when I first got into this industry in 2014, 2015, it's like leap year. So I'm happy about it, and it is becoming normal.
Thank you for all you do. I'd like to introduce Jasmine Mans, poet, and the woman behind Buy Weed from Women. You can't go to a cannabis event without seeing her merch, her bags, her teas all over the place. Jasmine, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely. I recently read an interview you did with Gossamer Magazine where you said, I'm just a poet putting my art on product. But that product is all over the place. You've done collaborations with Carhartt, and seriously, I can't go anywhere without seeing your mark made on the world. Tell us a little bit about your journey, how Buy Weed from Women is reaching beyond the cannabis sector.
Yeah, first, I am about language. I'm an author first. And so I always knew that it was about the message that you gave to people. I was never in the actual flower industry, but I noticed something very specific as different dispensaries began to kind of pop up across the country. They held so much space. In a non-competitive space that I was able to activate was putting products and merchandise in these stores and not actually touching the flower, but using language to kind of create sales and drive attention to a brand without ever having to kind of be confined by the taxes or all of the loopholes that the actual flower takes. And so Buy Weed from Women was able to take up so much space in all of the cannabis space without ever having to be taxed or questioned. And then I realized that the brand was more about gathering people together, that no one ever felt like they were in competition with Buy Weed from Women because we didn't have an actual product to compete with. And so I think that made a loud impact. And then just recently, we started writing books. And the goal has become how do we grab hold of the women's narrative in cannabis. And so my goal is not necessarily product, but narrative and message. And we found home in that. And so it makes me really happy.
It's beautiful. Thank you. Next up, we have Chef Nikki Stewart. She is an award-winning chef, creator of The High-End Affair. I'm blessed to call her a dear friend. Chef Nikki was just featured in Rolling Stone for DJ Jazzy Jeff's recent event. She's been on Forbes, countless mainstream publications. Chef Nikki, tell us a little bit about what you're doing with High-End Affair and how that's reaching audiences in the mainstream.
Thanks, Zoe. Well, the High-End Affair was founded roughly almost 10 years ago, and through a lot of trial and error, we pretty much served as a place that you could have a soft intro into the world of culinary and cannabis. I studied pharmaceutical sciences in college at The Ohio State University, if anyone cares. OH. Hey. And taking that into account when you're creating palatable experiences and soft intros for people is there's a lot of math and science behind that. And so I just don't throw weed in food. It's a lot of balance. It's a lot of care. It's a lot of holding space. And so the High End Affair over the years has been able to cultivate a safe space for people to be able to consume cannabis-infused foods, but at a very high culinary level. So initially, we have been traveling state to state on tour and legal markets. Sometimes we do them privately, and sometimes we open them up to the public. And usually, you're going to get what the fuck you pay for, okay? Because you have a really, really good time. Recently in Detroit, we started incorporating mushrooms on the front end, cannabis on the back end, and so it creates, fun. Typically, we do a theme. These days, we're doing high history theme. So we're teaching you history while you're getting high. So whether you're going through historic homes in Michigan, like the Ford Mansion, or the Kresge Mansion, which is the Kmart family, Berry Gordy's mansion, like where people are getting high in Berry Gordy's house, where Michael Jackson and Diana Ross were. Like, we are able to activate in these really cool spaces and with really cool people. So if you find the High End Affair in a city near you, please buy a ticket, because I promise you won't forget it.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you for all you do. Next up, we have Joyce Sonali, the COO of Sonoma Hill Farms and co-founder of the Cannabis Media Council. Joyce, I know you do a lot of bridging with your work with Cannabis Media Council, and I know with Sonoma Hill Farms, you recently did a cool collaboration involving Pink Jesus, your famous Pink Jesus strain, and ice cream. Tell us a little bit more about what you're up to over there.
Yeah, and I'm so happy to be here. I was at the first Revelry, I think it was like 8 years ago, so it's just so much magic here in New York. I love being with y'all. Thanks to the Revelry crew. So yeah, my journey is a 12-year journey now on cannabis, and we're kind of a group of people who come from all sorts of other industries, hospitality, venture, and cannabis. And there's so many people like us out there in the world in other industries that want to find moments with this plant and giving. I see what we're doing at Sonoma Hills Farm is really giving a platform for folks to access known origin, sense of place, organic inputs. We're the first OCal certified farm in California, and our lead on the cultivation left the French Laundry to join us. So he was working with chefs in terms of the medium of vegetables and putting things on the menus there. And so we're trying to evolve a platform which essentially has a place where folks can actually equivocate where the cannabis is coming from. This is a really social plant. So many of us want to come around together, and we're trying to find moments with folks that love the plant but maybe aren't directly dealing with the regulatory rigor. We take that on for them, and we allow for moments for them to kind of have bits of time with us, and hopefully that translates more so to consumers. And yeah, Cannabis Media Council, just a quick shout out on that. There's over 400 members, operating members, and what we try and do is, like the milk industry had Got Milk, we're trying to build public service announcements that connect with media companies and get us access to more media. So through that, we've done a lot of experimental guerrilla marketing strategies as well, but we're also accessing mainstream advertising, and the goal is that it uplifts all boats, and that behind it companies can step in and actually start to have more activations that are fair and reasonable and not sort of taking advantage of everybody looks at us as a cash cow, and we all know it's really hard. So
Amazing. Thank you. And thank you for all you do. I'm going to kick this first question over to Marvin. I know that you're really passionate about not getting lost in the echo chamber. I think oftentimes in the industry, we're busy talking to each other instead of reaching that mainstream. And I think an important aspect of that is consumer education. What role does consumer education play in this transition? And what strategies have you found effective in informing potential mainstream consumers about cannabis products?
I think education is the most important because, like, when you come to events like this, you're kind of preaching to the choir, and everybody knows about cannabis and the different strains and what have you. But once you get into the mainstream, you really have to educate them, and I educate them as cannabis is medicine, you know, and it's something that's been here for thousands of years, and we've been medicating it for thousands of years. You can't let them think about, and no, nothing disparaging the Cheech and Chong, but we can't have that narrative, and that's what people think in their minds when they're thinking about cannabis. You have to come to them and let them know that if you're going to an employer, if you're going to a union, and what have you, what are the benefits that it's going to do for your company, and what are the benefits that it's going to do for your education, for your employees, because it's going to cut down on absenteeism, it's going to make them healthier, and you're going to have a better workforce. And that's the whole thing, is just come at them with the facts, you know, because this plant doesn't need to be exaggerated, and just come out with the facts and tell them what the plant can do. And it's more, I'm getting more reception now from colleges and athletic organizations than I ever have. Probably because they're looking for money, but the other thing is they're looking for an alternative to, you know, for their athletes to medicate and to treat with. And I think something natural is great. That's why I'm keep pushing it along about cannabis.
Well, what you're doing is working, because we're seeing organizations like the NBA, the NFL soften in some ways. And so, you know, it's in large part for athletes like you who've been making a difference. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I think the big thing that I saw, I guess a month and a half ago, was USC signed that deal with cookies. And I'm getting a lot of calls from colleges and college athletic directors because they have to fund their programs. Now these kids are getting paid through the NIL, and they're looking for any amount of revenue stream. So that thing's going to open up also.
Definitely, definitely. Anyone else have anything to add about consumer education?
I mean, we know that nothing is created equal, right? And so the more that we are educated on all aspects, from health to who's creating the thing, to where the funds are going, it's important for the consumer to know. And one thing that we realized during the pandemic was that people had less disposable income, right? And so the consumer was all about integrity-based buying. The consumer only really stuck with the brands that they felt emotionally connected to. So the more knowledge and the more transparency we give to the consumer, the more their integrity is in alignment to the brand, and the more they feel like that brand belongs to them. And so I do think that integrity-based branding and consumer knowledge actually increases profitability.
I agree. Excellent. Chef Nikki, you do a lot of work with celebrities. You're always out there bridging that gap. What are some of the ways that you've seen celebrities standing up and reaching new audiences, spreading the word, really helping to advocate in that way? Do you have any examples you can share?
So many examples. Again, I do like the nice thing about when I interact with you, you feel safe. So regardless of who you are, whether you're a celebrity or you're just someone like me that likes to move through the world stealthily, is that you're going to be safe. But Dave Chappelle, I've worked for him for almost 15 years, and he has this story that he always tells that he got high on mac and cheese. And so, like, there's a couple times he was like, one time he was on Jimmy Fallon, and another time he was on another show, and he was talking about how high he got on the mac and cheese. Because I do make an infused mac and cheese that it just happens to just be one of the best levels of comfort food off to the side. That's not to the depths of my culinary skills, but I do make a really good mac and cheese. Anyway, so this mac and cheese story has gone so far. It's gone, a lot of people know this story.
The mac and cheese that's been heard around the world?
Yeah, it has been heard around the world. And then he has to tell his mother how has to explain to his mother how he got high on mac and cheese, and she's very confused because she's like, how the fuck did this happen to you? So I have a lot of instances where even Tiffany Haddish, I gave Tiffany Haddish one of her very first infused experiences and held space with her on mushrooms, and she went on, matter of fact, she went on Angela Yu's show and told the story. And then she went on The View and told the story. And then Chris Rock went on Ellen and told the story about the things that we do in these safe spaces. And, you know, I have to also explain to my mother that I'm not going to jail, right? Oftentimes. But there has been a great sense of like community around me that supports what I've been doing and supports this softer life in this. We're not like getting people like thrown under the bus. We're giving people joy, we're inserting positive energy, and we're allowing you to be yourself for however long I have you. And so a lot of this has spread through the world as something joyous, and hey, if you want a good time, you should call Chef Nikki. So that's how that goes.
Amazing. Thank you. Joyce, how do you think the perception of cannabis has evolved, and what challenges do you see in shifting that perception further into the mainstream markets?
Yeah, so I mean, every year we're seeing obviously new states coming online and an uptick of consumers, and you know, I like to point out like there's only new consumers to us. You know, like we're only going to continue to grow, whereas other industries maybe are, you know, not in that trajectory. And relative to, you know, how I think we can impact new consumers, a lot of these new markets are really focused on the, you know, the heightened THC potency, and you know, unfortunately, we see a big medical decline when you shift from medical to a rec state. A lot of those states generally don't have the robust support that they had for the medical program. It's really, we saw it starkly in California, and I've seen it state over state over state. But the consumer that's actually chasing, you know, that potency probably isn't a super sticky consumer for the brands. You know, so for us, we're really cannabinoid agnostic, we say. So we love all the cannabinoids, right? Like, we're going to learn something that can be helpful from a wellness attribute across so many different cannabinoids. And in addition to that, the plant has so many things that it can bring to our communities. You know, the industrial side, setting that aside for what we're all doing on the farming side, but there could be applications there too. So we basically see the plant as an open opportunity in any lane, and how can we collaborate with perfume makers and fashion brands, and you pointed to the ice cream company. It's a 10-shop ice cream group called Humphrey Slocum. It's kind of high-end ice cream, chef-driven ice cream in the Bay. They interpreted our signature flavor called Pink Jesus. It's just an interpretation. It's just here are the notes. It was a coconut raspberry base, so it's actually mostly vegan, with bursts of raspberry and a rose lavender infused caramel. It was served in all of their stores as like a 420 promotion, and then we in turn interpreted their signature flavor of ice cream in the form of a pre-roll called Secret Breakfast. And the goal was, who doesn't like to grab some ice cream and smoke some weed and pair those two? You know, and you can kind of duplicate that experience across so many different mediums. So a lot of the, you know, chefs and folks in our community couldn't necessarily realize how they could have a moment without the regulatory rigor. And that was an example to them of like, oh, here's a thing that I can do that actually elevates my interests. So the ice cream shop, you know, they had a whole new audience coming in, and now the dispensaries have a whole new, you know, name on their shelves that is tangential and gives them a lot of lift in, you know, the social media world. So for us, it's that, and it's also, we grow CBG, CBD, CBDV, THCV, and THC. And we're trying to do things that, you know, behind harvest, really allow for seasonal lifts in different moments. And CBG, for one, I think a white paper just came out, and Tony Hawk was talking about it, and it's a really, really helpful cannabinoid. I feel a lot of focus around it. It kind of helps with anxiety. It helps with if you have any swelling or like coming down after a workout. So I think companies just need to go beyond, what it is that consumers, you think that the data is telling you, and find the avenues for where those new consumers may be looking.
Thank you, Joyce. One of my favorite things about cannabis brands partnering with mainstream companies is just how much fun it is. It's so much fun when your favorite weed brand is partnering with your favorite fashion house or fast food chain. It's just fun. I mean, never mind the fact that it is another opportunity to navigate. It's awfully challenging to market cannabis brands, and like you just mentioned, so it gives you a new opportunity to get the word out and kind of get around those challenges. It's fun. It helps further embed cannabis into the population. It helps make cannabis more relatable. There's just a whole list of breaking the stigma, normalization. I could really go on and on about all the benefits of these types of partnerships. I don't know how much more time we have, but I do think we have time for one more question for everyone here. And this is for the panel, so whoever feels inspired. In your experience, what cultural shifts within the cannabis industry are essential for gaining acceptance in mainstream society? I think the New York Times recently just published an article where they're upset because we're, from their perspective, becoming a little too clinical. We're not stoner enough anymore. And then you'll read another article in a mainstream publication where they're mad because of the opposite. So, what shifts do you think we need to make within the industry to help cross those bridges? What does that look like to you?
Okay, so this just recently happened to me. So I had this beautiful article done in Bon Appetit magazine, first cannabis-related article in Bon Appetit magazine for April. This was last year. And they pulled it, right? I was like, I was that close to just softening the blow for everyone. And then they come out and then they just do a brownie recipe. And I was like, I was so upset. But these are the challenges that I face because I'm actually a chef, like a regular chef. I just have a skill set and a knowledge of science, and I'm able to blend these things together in an alchemist way. But creating normalcy in the culinary space and saying, okay, I believe that there should be a cannabis-infused product in everyone's home in their kitchen. Just something simple, whether it's a condiment, whether it's a spice, whether it's a sauce, whatever it is, that I feel like it should be adjacent to your vitamins, right? And your supplements, it should be right there. And so I feel like breaking the ceiling of this culinary space and creating the normalcy of cannabis being a really viable experience. One day I really hope James Beard would be like, we'll just add this to the categories. So I feel like that is the main thing that I feel like we're getting close.
Thank you.
Really close.
I am told that time is up, but I just want to leave with this one thought. If you're out there in the audience and you are a mainstream company, a product, you're looking to do a collaboration with someone in the cannabis industry, I ask you to please consider it, because not only are you becoming a part of the advocacy efforts that we still so desperately need, we've come a long way, but we still have so much further that we need to go. You're also infusing new life into your own brand. So it's a win-win situation. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and attention today. Please give our panelists a round of applause.